Hello everyone and welcome back to Crafts by the Bow. Today I'm going to show you how I made a couple of special cards that I needed during the week. My husband has a work colleague who's retiring and he wanted a card that everybody could sign. And so this is what I made. I made a box, just a nice little box, and the second video in this series will show you how to make the box. And then I made a 4-fold card and I stamped it with the waterfront set, and I also stamped the back so that there would be lots of room for people to sign it. And then we have a wedding that we're going to as well, and this is the card I made for the wedding. I made it in exactly the same box, and this time, instead of doing quite so much stamping, I used some of the retired Cake Soiree paper and just did stamping across the top. I didn't put anything on the back at all. So I'm going to show you how to make the card. Now, I looked on Pinterest and I looked on YouTube, and a lot of the sizings were English sizings and in centimetres, and their paper is slightly different to ours. So I was working on trying to convert it, and I found Dawn Griffith's tutorial on how to make this, but I'm not quite so happy with the length of the white that's showing on here. On these sides they have a little bit more, and on this it just seemed a bit skimpy, so I altered the size of the inside card. So although I used the tutorial from Dawn, I have changed the sizes slightly. I'll just put those to one side. If you haven't made a 4-fold card before, I would suggest making it in paper first, because it can be just a little bit tricky. And once you've made it once, it's fine. You know exactly what you need to do. So to start off with, I've used a piece of Whisper White 12 by 12 cardstock, and I've cut it down to 5.5 by 11.5. And I'm going to score this right-hand side at 1/4 inch. And just let me find my little paper piercer or something just to point out. The 1/4 inch side I'm going to use on the right hand side of the trimmer, and it's this first little line. So it's just a tiny bit after the grey plastic piece here. So I'm just going to line it up with that. I'm going to make sure my cutting blade is out of the way, because I do have a habit for using the cutting blade instead of the scoring blade. And I'm just going to score at 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to turn the card around, and I'm going to score at 3 3/4 inches. So now I have that 1/4 inch score line at this side, and I've lined it up with 3 3/4, and I'm going to score it. And then keeping the card in the same place, I'm just moving it along until I get all the way along to 7 1/4. And I'm just going to score again. Okay, I'll put this arm down. So I've turned it round so that it's the 1/4 inch, the 3 3/4, and the 7 1/4. And now I'm going to score down this left-hand side, but I'm only going to score to this bottom score line, the one that was on 7 1/4. So I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to line it up at 5/8. Now, where did I just put my paper piercing tool? So 5/8, halfway mark is 4/8, and then you count the 2 little lines till you're at 5/8. Each of our little lines is 1/16. So this is 4/8, 5/8. I'm going to line it up there. Make sure it's lined up at the bottom. Make sure that cutting blade is out of the way. And I'm going to score from the top down to this line, which is really on 7 1/4. Okay, and then we're going to take that out and we're going to cut this line. if you feel confident enough, instead of scoring, you could do it with your blade. So if I start at 7 1/4 and go up, now, let me just put this away because we don't need it anymore. So if you scored that line, you need to get your scissors and, I would use long bladed scissors and just cut down to that last score line. If you cut it like I did, the only other piece you need to cut is down here, like this, okay? And just let me trim that. It's not quite as straight as I'd like it to be. So I'm going to pop that back in and I'm going to line it up just the other way. So I'm putting down 5/8. Yeah, it's just a little bit out at the bottom there, look. I can't have had it quite straight. There we are. Now it's straight. Ooh, let's get rid of that little piece. There we are. That's better. Now with your bone folder, what you're going to need to do, turn this over. If, like me, when you use your trimmer, you get just a little lip on the card, just go over it, press it down. Okay, and then we're going to fold. And I've got the smaller side at the left-hand side. I'm going to fold it over. And I'm going to go down with my bone folder. And then I'm going to fold it back. If you can see any little lips sticking up, just press it down again. And that just leaves the 1/4 inch. And I'm going to fold that towards me and then put it down with my bone folder. There we go. So you now have an opening card like this with the 1/4 inch strip on here. And that 1/4 inch strip is where we're going to adhere the front of the card. But we don't need that again for a few minutes. What you need to do next is to cut some more white card, and you're going to need a piece of white that's cut at 3 3/4 by 5. You're going to need 2 pieces that are cut at 3 inches by 4 3/8. And then you're going to need 2 more pieces that are cut at 2 1/4 by 3 3/4. So there's your white pieces. And you're going to need your 1 white piece for the front, and this is cut at 2 3/4 by 4 1/4, and that piece needs to go with the front, with the card itself, so I'm just popping that inside. You're also going to need some coloured card, and I've chosen Blackberry Bliss here, and these are cut at 4 by 5 1/4. You need 2 pieces cut at 3 1/4 by 4 5/8, and you need 2 more pieces that are cut at 2 1/2 by 4. Okay, so let's start to put the card together. So here's the white piece that we cut at 2 3/4 by 4 1/4, and we're just going to adhere it to that little 1/4 inch lip. Now, it's better to have the adhering on the back of the front. If you put it in this way, it's more noticeable that you've got the little lip, whereas if you put this one on the top, it sort of melts into it, you don't notice. And when you turn it over on the back, you've got a piece of card anyway. So I'm going to use Tombow for this, just because when it's a 1/4 inch piece, excuse me, it's very tiny. So you might find that you need to wiggle the card around a little bit. So I'm just putting Tombow all the way down. And then I'm going to get my little piece of card. And I actually find it easier if I've got the card open and line it up on my grid paper, so I know where I'm looking. And then just pop that on. Make sure it's level at the bottom and level on the sides. I should check on the back here. Yep, that's fine. And then as soon as the glue is dry, I'll do mine now, but you can wait a few seconds. As soon as this glue is dry, we're going to cut this little lip off. we don't need that. I'll just throw that piece away. Okay, and pop the Tombow back. So there we are, that's the base of our card, and that's the tricky bit done. There are no more difficult measurings, cuttings, scorings, or anything like that. There we go. So I'm going to start at the back, and I'm going to use the biggest piece of the Blackberry Bliss that we cut, and I'm just going to adhere it with a little bit of fast fuse. We don't really need much. I haven't decided what this card's going to be yet, so I'm not doing any stamping or anything. I'm just getting the background ready. Okay, and then we need our biggest piece of white card. Mine's got a little bit bent, but once it's adhered, it won't matter at all. I don't tend to buy much of the 12 by 12 card, but I do like to always have the neutrals set in, which is the black and the brown and the white in 12 by 12, because I think they're the most useful, especially for cards like this. Okay, now the two middle pieces, we need the next two biggest pieces of the Blackberry Bliss. I think this would be really nice for Christmas cards. A little bit different, but a special Christmas card would be really nice. This one. Just make sure they're all level at the bottom. And then we'll put the next two pieces of white on. So these are the pieces that measured 3 by 4 3/8. I think that's much nicer with a bigger border at the top. But that's just my eye, and you might like it much better with the narrower piece at the top. It really is whatever works for you. There we go. And then onto the back of the front, if that makes sense. Just going to put the Blackberry Bliss card on. And you'll notice that it goes over the little lip where we did the stick in the front to the 1/4 inch strip. And it isn't really noticeable on that side, but it would be on the other side. Make sure it's level. There we go. I'm going to close it up, and then we've just got the front piece left to do. So let's start with the Blackberry Bliss again. Make sure it lines up. This is why I like to do starting from the back, because I like to use these steps here that show me where the card should be. It just makes it easier for me to line up. There we go. Now, for this one, as I said, I'm not going to do any stamping because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put on it. So I've cut DSP, and the biggest piece of DSP here is 2 3/4 by 3 5/8. And I'm just going to put that on. Little border at the bottom. It won't be as big as the Blackberry Bliss and the white borders. This is cut, so it's only 1/8 inch at each side. There we go. And then I need the two middle ones. As you can see, this is some paper that I'd used on something else. But nobody knows. No, they're not going to look at the back of it. And if they do, you know, hey ho, it's a handmade card. Oh, it's upside down. See how quickly it comes together? You see, it's just that first little piece where you've got to sort of cut and measure. I would do the stamping before I put the white card on, ordinarily. There we go. That's better. I do like that with the larger border round. Very nice. Okay. Now, you can put some ribbon across here on this one. I popped ribbon across and I glued the ribbon down before I glued the white panel onto the pink panel. And I did the stamping after I'd glued the ribbon, so I knew how much space I had, but I lined it up on the Stamparatus. Okay, so you could put, oh, let me have a look, this rich raspberry ribbon that we have. Oh, that looks pretty on there, doesn't it? Very pretty. That would make it really pop out. So, and you wouldn't see the line between the card and the DSP paper there quite so much. Yeah, that is nice. If you don't want to put ribbon on, you could put another little piece of paper. Let's see. These are some of the scraps of the Blackberry Bliss. You could actually just glue this across, cut it a little bit smaller, narrower, and use that to go across. That looks really nice as well. You could use a different colour. You could use the back of the DSP. Let me see. This is my little pieces of DSP. But you could, have we got a narrow piece? Might not have too narrow a piece, no. But you could certainly cut this down and put over. That would look nice too. So if you didn't have a matching ribbon, it doesn't matter, you could use card or DSP. Or you could use card that matched one of the other flowers. Whatever you like, whatever you think works for you. Doesn't matter what anybody else has put on their cards, just make sure it's what you like for your card. Okay, now I'll try and put the sizes on my blog so that you don't have to keep rewinding and looking at what size this white card was and what size this DSP was. But I hope you'll give this a go. They do make some beautiful cards, and maybe post a picture so we can see what you've all made. Thanks very much indeed. My next video will be the box that I used to pop these in. And then you just tie up at the side. And I think the box would be quite nice to put half a dozen cards in and give as a gift. It doesn't have to be just, you know, a box to give somebody a card in, but I think it would make a really nice gift. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye everyone.